Allow yourself to get very still in the body. And then slowly allow yourself to get still in the mind. Allow the awareness to anchor inward. Let it anchor into your breath. So you're not changing the breath. You're just using it as a beautiful magnet for the attention, for the awareness. And just allow all of that awareness to pull into the breath. Like all of the metal filings pull toward the magnet. In the same way, allow your breath to just draw your attention toward it, pulling that awareness away from all of the sounds and the smells, the physical sensations, and also pulling your mind away from the jumpiness between the past and the future, your likes, your dislikes, your hopes, your fears. Just allow all of those individual thought processes to get pulled inward deeply and powerfully into the breath. And as you inhale, feel the flow of the Mother Ganga River flowing into you. We know she flows beside us, but allow yourself to both visualize and also experience that feeling of the flow of the river into you as you inhale. You're not only taking in oxygen and air, but literally the flow of that sacred river. Feel her rushing into you. Feel her rushing through you. And as she flows into every nook and cranny, every crevice, every cell of your being, as that powerful flow flows in, notice how it grabs hold and undoes all of the junk that's gathered inside of us. False identifications, narratives, ignorance, attachments, expectations, fears, grudges, all of that. It's like just gunk lining the channel within you. And as Ganga flows in, she literally flows like this powerful source that just rests all of that gunk from off the walls of the channel of you. Feel that happening inside you as you inhale and allow the presence of this Mother Goddess River to flow in. And as you exhale, allow yourself very consciously and deliberately to give to her all of that that is stuck inside you. All of your anger, frustration, stories that you tell yourself. Just allow yourself to offer into her flowing waters all of that that's occupying your mind, that's pulling you out of this very moment. And feel her waters flowing then out of you on the exhalation, carrying within them all of that you've let go. And all of that she grabs hold of. Feel it all flow out of you into her waters and out rushing all the way to the ocean at Ganga Sagar. Just allow the inhalations and exhalations to come, feeling the rushing of her water of the presence as you inhale, and feeling her wash you out as you exhale. Slowly and gently, bring the palms together, chest level in Namaste. And gently rub the palms of your hands against each other. Press the palms of your hands into your closed eyes. Slowly lower the hands and open the eyes. Welcome. Welcome to Satsang. So beautiful to be together with you all. Starting as we always do with one of the questions that comes in advance from our beautiful family and community joining us online via the internet. And then we'll open it up to any questions that any of you have. There's a microphone right here in the center, so just feel free to raise your hand and come to the mic, tell us your name, and share your question. I hear you emphasizing that we should push through resistance lovingly. And I want to know how we can do that. That's asked from Sena Daba. Yeah, I'm kind of committed to doing everything lovingly, especially when working with the self. Obviously with others as well. We can only give that which we're able to do with ourselves. I spent many, many years of my life trying to fix myself in all sorts of not so nice to the self ways. And what I've realized over the years is that there aren't really 2 selves or 3 selves or 20 selves. We talk about my this self and that self and this self. And well, this self thinks this and it's gonna, annihilate that self. And what I've realized over the years in my felt sense experience is, yeah, there's different poles. We have different patterns. We have different voices in our heads that are really reflections of things that we've heard throughout our lives that we've internalized. But there's only one self. And so if one part of me, one voice in me, is mean to the rest of it, well, at the end of the day, you're all going to bed together. And as anyone who's ever been in a relationship knows, going to sleep before you've made up doesn't feel very good, especially if you've got to share a bed. But even knowing that the other one is on the couch doesn't feel good. And so when you're working with internal conflict, voices in you, patterns in you that are pulling you in directions that are not where you want to go, to deal with them any way other than lovingly literally creates a war inside. And that's no fun. I've never felt that is productive, beneficial, helpful. You do have to be strong. You've got to use willpower. You've got to use discipline. When the alarm goes off that first day at 4 a.m, there's a horde of voices that are like, nah, let us sleep. Nah, forget it. Nah, You've got to exercise strength and discipline and willpower and a little bit of, grit. But it's not yelling at the other parts of you. It's not putting the rest of you down. It's not saying, you lazy, stupid, parts of me. It's just, yeah, you people keep screaming, but I'm going to get into the shower. Yeah, I hear you, and I'm getting up anyway. And in the same way, working with resistance to spiritual progress, there's a dozen reasons at least that we're resistant to it. We talk about so many of those on different nights. We're resistant because of self-sabotage. We don't believe that we're actually worthy of it. We don't believe we deserve it. We're resistant because we've been told something different about ourselves, and we want to make sure that we live in such a way that reinforces a belief that we have, even if that belief is negative and detrimental. We're resistant because Newtonian properties of inertia, right? An object at rest is going to stay at rest. And to the extent that our habits and our ways feel restful to us, we're resistant to change. We're resistant because sometimes it's threatening to family members, to friends, to our career, to our way of living. I mean, there's, as I said, at least a dozen reasons that we're resistant. But trying to steamroller that resistance just splits you inside. And that's the last thing we want. We're all on a path of yoga. Yoga is union. Individual self to divine self. All of our spiritual practices are about union, oneness, expansion. The idea of chopping yourself up into bits inside and pitting one part of you against the other part of you is kind of the exact opposite of what a spiritual path is about. So on a personal level, I have found that the loving, caring, gentle, patient approach is actually much more effective than the yelling at parts of myself. But that doesn't mean that you're not strong. Love can be very strong. Love can be fierce. As anyone who's ever dealt with personally or family members or loved ones struggling with addiction, struggling with things, we've got to be fierce. There are times in our life where love is fierce. Look at the love of a mama bear for her babies. Right? You get in the wrong place at the wrong time, that love of the mama bear is fierce. The way that we need to stand up for our rights, protect equality, protect justice, protect the environment, protect minorities. I mean, we need to be fierce in love. But when you're dealing with inner resistance, what I have found is the more you push at it, forcefully, negatively, meanly, the more those parts of you contract. You know, it's like those little bugs that when we were kids we used to play with, those tiny, tiny little bugs that if you touch them, they crawl, they, roll up into a little ball. I forget what they're called. But just the little gray, roly-poly bugs. And we used to have so much fun just gently touching them. And they would roll into a ball. And turtles do it. So many animals do it. And we do it energetically. When we get attacked from outside, from inside, our inner emotional instinct is we contract like this. And that's the last thing you want. Because real change requires openness. So what I have found is that if instead of pushing against those parts, instead of thinking about conquering them, annihilating them, beating them, destroying them, which is a lot of times the words that we use to talk about aspects of ourselves. Instead of that, if you just think about holding it lovingly. How many of you are parents in here, if you have kids? Raise your hand if you have kids. Great. Now, if your kid is throwing a temper tantrum on the ground, there's a lot of ways you can deal with that temper tantrum. What we know psychologically about the science of healthy, effective parenting is not going to surprise you. Yelling at the kid, telling them they're worthless, stupid, useless, you're going to abandon them in the middle of the supermarket, it's not going to work. It might get them up off the floor, but they're going to need years of therapy later on. It's not the effective way. The best way of dealing with a child's temper tantrum is you hold them. Gently but firmly. Gently but firmly. I am here, I am present. No, I am not buying you the truck. No, we are not doing this. No. Not giving in. Not going to teach you that throwing a temper tantrum is the way to get what you want, because that is also a very detrimental life lesson. Not going to give you what you want, but not going to abandon you, not going to fight you, not going to scold you, not going to harm you. I'm just going to hold you. Firmly, lovingly. And eventually the screaming and the yelling, it softens, and what you end up with is a sort of emotionally deflated, but now calm child in your arms, who has learned, no matter what I do, I'm never going to be abandoned. No matter what I do, love is always there. No, the temper tantrum isn't the way to get what I want. But I'm always held. I'm seen. And whether it's an actual child of yours on the floor of a supermarket, or whether it's an inner habit experience that's giving resistance, it's the same thing. You hold it lovingly, you notice it. But you don't give in. You gently, 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 gently hold it and push through. So yeah, that's why I always suggest working lovingly. Other questions? Yes.
Namaste.
Namaste.
My name is Toma, and the last days I had this question, the last years my life changed, I would not imagine before. And the question is, what is the difference between surrendering and being lazy or resistance because of the fears or something? That how to know, because before I had a lot of plans, wishes and everything, and now I'm like going with the flow.
Yeah.
But that sometimes the mind says, yeah, you should do more, you should think about the future and all these things. But I'm happy how I am now.
Beautiful, beautiful. So the difference between surrender and laziness. Surrender is active. Laziness is passive. Surrender is not an absence of doing. Laziness is an absence of doing. Surrendering has to do with my mindset while I'm doing. The unsurrendered mind is deeply attached to what I'm going to get from what I'm doing, to what I have to do. Think about your life and your heart in a vice that's being squeezed. That's the unsurrendered life. That's what the mind does to us all the time. It's constantly, it has to be this way, it has to be that way. I have to do this. It's just driven by desire, by fear, by attachment, by envy, by all of these things. The surrendered mind says, okay, God, you flow through me. I've got my arms, I've got my legs, I've got my brain, I've got my time, my energy, my talent, my resources, my skills. I've got all of that. Use me. Doesn't mean I sit on the couch, put my feet up, and eat potato chips for the rest of my life. It's not complacency. It's not lack of doing. It's how we're doing. Rather than the drive that says, gotta get ahead, gotta squash the competition, that's the bulldozer approach. And the dilemma is that the universe actually has its own plans. And the problem with not surrendering is that you find yourself very frustrated, very angry because other people, the weather, traffic, stock market, everything is an obstacle in your path. Like, I gotta get there. You get the hell out of my way. You are a problem. You are a problem. And you're kind of doing battle as you move through your life. Or you're constantly looking for objects that you can grab and use to get you where you want to go. So whatever the goal is, you've objectified the world. Everything is either a hurdle, an obstacle, or an object that you can use. And the moment that things don't go your way, which I guarantee that moment is not very far off in the future, because, as I said, the universe has its own plans, right? They say if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. We were just talking about that today. So, the surrendered mindset, it's not that you're not doing. It's that you say, oh, okay, so I guess here we are. In a traffic jam. Not that my blood pressure goes through the roof. Not that I start screaming at the person next to me because it's their fault I'm late. Not that I become terrified with, oh my God, I'm going to get fired, I'm going to lose my job, then I'm going to be homeless, then I'm going to... You don't allow the mind to do that. You say, okay, here we are. The mark of a surrendered mind is the number of times a day you say, here we are. Because life just keeps doing that to you. Here we are. Here we are. And wherever you are, you pick it up right there. Because when you've surrendered yourself to just being a tool in God's hands, so wherever you are able to be that instrument. Things change in life. Things don't always go your way. Life, as they say, throws you curveballs. Okay, here we are, a curveball. Now what? How do I, as an instrument in God's hands, allow the energy of the curveball now to flow through me? That's surrender. So it's not complacency, it's not laziness, it's not lack of doing. In fact, people who are the most successful and effective are those who are surrendered. Because if we're not surrendered, we're so stuck in our heads with how things have to be. It's the my way or the highway kind of view of life. And you don't get much accomplished that way. And you're miserable. So as you say, you feel so much better being surrendered. Yeah, it feels great. And you may end up in a completely different place than you thought you were going. But it's not that you stop putting one foot in front of the other. It's not that you stop using your arms and your legs and your brain and your resources. But you sort of allow the divine, allow the signs of the divine, allow your intuition. Allow the messages from the universe to dictate the path rather than you having blinders on. Great. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, come.
You spoke about Seva the other day. Is Seva and devotion the same? And could you shed more light on how do we devote ourselves to another human being and at the same time not lose our self?
Beautiful. Yeah. So, Seva, which is selfless service, we spoke about it the other day as it's a spiritual practice. It's not the same as volunteer work, which is wonderful also, but Seva is actually a spiritual practice of allowing yourself to be used by the divine. It's not about on my schedule, what I want to be doing, it's not that. It's how can I serve? What is needed in this moment? And what Seva does is it purifies our mind, purifies our thoughts, purifies our heart. It's a very powerful and very core spiritual practice. Is it the same as devotion? Well, ultimately, eventually, all of these paths merge in one. Think about Ganga flowing in front of us. There's so many ways to get into Ganga, right? You can walk down our marble steps, grab onto one of the chains, have a bath. You can walk upriver to Ramjula, where there's a sandy beach. You can walk right in off the sandy beach. You can go up to Lakshmanjula. They've got some rocks that people jump off of. Not something I would do, but people do it. You can get in however you want. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, you all end up in Ganga. And that's the point. The point is to be in the river. The point is to have that blessing, have that liberation, have that freedom that the Mother Goddess Ganga gives us. She doesn't care how you get in. Whether our path is Seva, or our path is devotion, or the path is wisdom, or the path is karma yoga, literally, like Seva, but every minute, just every action is my path to God. Whether my path includes mantra chanting, meditation, whatever it may be. And most of our paths are kind of a blend of a lot of these things. Ultimately, they're all bringing us into that river. So the path of Seva is much more a path of karma yoga, how to use every action as a way of getting closer to the divine. Devotion tends to be a bhakti yoga path, but they end up in the same place. And they overlap along the way. Because in Seva, there has to be devotion. Whether it's devotion to the one you are serving, people do Guru Seva, full of devotion to the Guru, and, in fact, one of the sort of funny, sweet things here is the sheer number of people who come in and who essentially beg to scrub Swamiji's floors, or wash his clothes, or wash his feet, and can we have this seva? And he doesn't let people do that seva. We have a beautiful family team here that does that. But that's the yearning that people have. It's oh my God, we've come to the Guru. Let us just do the most menial work, so that whatever let me sweep, let me scrub, I'll do your laundry, I'll do your, everybody wants to do that. And we always have to say no, But, so there has to be devotion. So whether it's devotion to the Guru when you're looking to do, that type of seva, whether it's devotion to God, and you've just offered yourself in surrender to the divine, use me. Every minute, every moment, let my life be seva. Whether it's devotion to your own spiritual path. A conscious, determined, committed practice of Seva, knowing that this is this powerful path to my awakening. So yeah, there has to be devotion in it, but the practice is not a practice simply of what one would consider bhakti, of singing, chanting, praying, performing puja. It's much more the practice of using your hands, your legs, your arms, your brain, your time in service. And then your second question of loving someone, being devoted to them, serving them without losing yourself. So, I'm struggling here only semantically, because ultimately, the highest goal of love and devotion is exactly to lose yourself. If you're trying to hold on to like, where's me in all of this, you're missing the point of love. What makes love so beautiful is the melting and the merging of two into one. It's what you can think of as kind of the honeymoon phase of two human. Hold on to myself in love. And yet, in relationship, in human-to-human relationship, you want to make sure that the yearning for love isn't something that makes one human being subsumed by another human being. That's not the two becoming one. You merging into me is not love. Me merging into you is not. It's the two of us merging into love. It's a subtle difference, but it's an important difference. So it's not, I have become lost in you, the human being. It's each of us as individual beings with our own stories and our own attachments and our own struggles and our own fears and all of that. We have both lost that separate sense of self as we merge together into the experience of love. And so this is where, when you speak about maintaining your sense of self, that's a pragmatic practice of boundaries in a relationship with a human being. Because no human being who loves you wants you to give up yourself in service of them. The love is when we both together let go of our individuality and merge into that beautiful space of love. But if you're in a situation where you are losing your sense of self in favor of someone else's self, that you want to look at. Because your dharma is not to lose yourself in a different karmic package, a different human drama. You want to lose yourself in your higher self, in the divine self, in the eternal self. not in just a different human story that happens to be in a different body than yours. And this just takes awareness. It takes courage, it takes self-confidence, it takes self-awareness to ensure that someone else's karmic journey and package is not essentially manipulating you into it. And that's a lot easier said than done. Because as we go through our lives with our karmic packages, yeah, God, it would be so much easier if someone else would just do this thing, and then I wouldn't have to face that difficulty. Like, here I am in a difficult moment, face to face with my stuff. And if you just would act a different way, then I wouldn't have to look at this stuff. And wouldn't that be so much easier? But that's not ultimately the goal. The goal is not for us to prevent those we love from having to face their own karmic packages, from having to move through the lessons that their life is meant to give them. You know, I think about when I moved to India and, you know, how difficult that was for my mom at that time, who had, you know, amazing lady, wonderful lady, and had a really clear picture of like, this is what it's going to be like when my daughter gets older and gets married and starts popping out the grandchildren, and, you know, either she lives down the block or I move to a block away, and like had sort of a whole vision of what things were going to look like. And suddenly things weren't going to look like that. I knew that my Dharma was here. If I had allowed myself, rather, without the help of lots of amazing mentors and divine intervention and psychological intervention, to not be subsumed by her agenda and drama, or rather, if I had allowed myself to be subsumed by that, I wouldn't be here. And she would not have grown and transformed and experienced what she spent the last 30 years experiencing. And the beautiful kicker of it is, she had a devastating stroke 3 years ago that wiped out most of her cognitive capacity. And I brought her back here. After the doctors in LA did everything they possibly could to no avail, I brought her back here. She's here. She's gonna, whenever the time is, leave her body on the banks of Ganga. You know, we hope that she'll have many more healthy years. She's been here 3 years. But I share that story because if I had allowed myself to be manipulated into someone else's agenda, someone else's package, neither would I have been able to live my Dharma, nor would she have actually been able to experience the fullness of her Dharma here. The last 3 years here have been so extraordinarily healing for her on so many levels that she never would have been through if I weren't here. She'd be in, you know, some awful, godforsaken memory care facility in Los Angeles. But because I was able to take care of my separate self and her separate Dharma and her separate karmic package, not only was it certainly the right choice for me, but the ripple impact was actually the most powerfully right choice for her, even though she fought tooth and nail in the beginning for it to happen. So you separating into live your Dharma. I don't mean necessarily separating physically, but separating boundary-wise, energetically, is not only the most important thing for you, but it's actually the most important thing for the people around us. We're not doing other people a spiritual karmic favor by protecting them from having to learn the lessons that they took this birth to learn. Yeah. Other questions? Any other questions? Yes, okay. We'll take this as the last one.
My question is all about giving and boundary setting. Since being here the past month and a half or so, one of the most eye-opening things that I've experienced is all of the people, beautiful, beautiful souls and humans asking for money, asking for chapati, asking for food. And in that time, I've noticed my own attention become almost like numb to it and normalized by it. And as I interact with that part of me, I feel how out of alignment that is to my soul's deeper purpose of helping and loving and giving how I can. So my question is really around where that line between helping and serving is, and discerning when to give and what to give to other people. How do we find that discernment and work on that?
Beautiful. I think a really good rule of thumb is give what you can whenever you can. Recognizing, of course, that this is not the last moment you're going to be alive. So you're not compelled to give every single thing you have to the first person on the street who needs it. Because then you have nothing to give the second person who needs it. And you have no way to fulfill your actual purpose here on earth. So give what you can, when you can, but stretch yourself. We can almost all give a little bit more than we think we can give. We need to hold on to a little bit less than we think we need to hold on to, for most of us. But recognize that money is not the only thing that can be given. And it's not the only thing they need. Yeah, it's the thing they need most. If you have it, give it. If you don't have it, can you give them a smile? Can you look at them, eye to eye, see them as a human? Most people in their not wanting to give money turn away. It makes us uncomfortable to be asked for something that we're not going to give. It makes us uncomfortable to see the poverty. Don't let yourself turn away. It's an incredibly powerful spiritual practice to see the suffering humanity of another, even when you know you can't alleviate it. Because the truth is, whether you give them 1 chapati or 10, 100 rupees or 10,000 rupees, it's not solving their problem in its entirety. It's solving their problem for the next hour or week. But it's not solving the problem in their entirety. But allow yourself to experience the sacred humanity in them. And allow them to have the experience of being seen in their sacred humanity. Whether they're poor and homeless, whether they're a leper with oozing wounds, whether they haven't had a shower in a month, they're still a sacred human. And you can give them that. So give what you can. If you've got something in your hands or your pockets that you can give. If you don't, see them. Really see them. And throughout our lives, giving isn't always necessarily to the individual. When I was heartbroken in the beginning by the kids who would run up to the cars in Delhi when the cars would stop at a red light and being told not to give to them because then the rest of them come out of the woodwork and they get run over by cars and whatnot. Well, when I spoke to Pujya Swamiji about it, he said, open schools. Open free schools. These individual kids may not go, but you'll keep other kids off the street. Start programs, provide free education. You don't have anything to give the woman on the side of the road? Okay. Open a center where she can get skills, or women like her can get skills, so they can actually earn a living. So giving is not always just what can I give at this exact moment, what's in my pocket. But what actually can I give in a way that may also actually even have a bigger ripple impact? So, yeah, give as much as you can, wherever you can, however you can. And you'll be able to give in different ways at different times. But you'll know. You'll know. Be clear with yourself. Yeah, beautiful. Have such a beautiful rest of your evening, everyone. For those of you staying here at the ashram, we have a full day of yoga, meditation, philosophy, beautiful fire ceremony in the morning, of course our sacred Ganga Arti. Everything is open to everyone, whether you're staying here actually or not. Everyone is welcome to come to all of it. There's no charge for anything. So, however long you're here, just allow yourself to really absorb as much as you possibly can. And I look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow evening in Satsang. And so much love to you all.